Hi guys, so we'll start with our demo. Let's start with Tisha and Jeremiah, who want to go ahead for the demo.
Okay, so our issue is adding the feature to estimate the next purchase date. And what our code does is update the date next purchase property in each item. To do that, we use the get days between dates function in the dates file to calculate the difference between last purchase and the current purchase date. And I need to update this. Thanks for catching that in the code, Jeremiah. So what it does now after our update is if one of those dates is undefined or not a date, it'll return undefined. And the calculate estimate function is what'll set that value to a default of 14 days as necessary. If there actually is a date difference, then it'll calculate that and then use those two functions in the update item function to estimate the new next purchase date. So what that looks like in the app is here. I'm going to go ahead and click on or I'll show you first what we have in the gums item in Firebase. Currently has it as last purchased May 2nd, and the next purchase date will be May 11th. But after updating that, and that changes to today. And because of that time difference, the new estimate is on the 12th. So in the code, here we have the update item function. And this is just updated today to take the item instead of the item ID. And then it calculates the days between purchases using the get days between dates here. And then using those dates, it'll update these fields. And then for the dates function, we originally had it calculating as the default 14 days here, but after Jeremiah and I discussed it today, I agreed that it should return undefined in case this function is used elsewhere in the code in the future. I think generally what we think the best practices should be is keeping it generic and not for a specific use case for another function. And then we also added a check to see if it's a valid date. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Jeremiah?
No, that is, I think, everything that we did. And then, yeah, the only thing I would add is that the utility function that we're getting from the Collab lab has a default parameter for if you pass in an undefined value for the date between days. So made more sense to return undefined from this instead of the same default value, just in case one of the dates isn't actually a date.
I just wanted to make a comment about this because there was a lot of back and forth between the three of us. And at first, I think when they set it to 14, it made sense to me. And I think one thing I didn't realize when I was going through this code is that I didn't know that if there's a default value set on a function parameter, that you can actually pass in undefined values and it wouldn't break the function, but it would just set it. So after we talked about it, I realized that, and I think this looks good now. There is just one other really small comment. I don't think I've approved this yet, so it's not pulled in. Tisha, could you scroll up a little bit? Into, yeah, a little bit more up. Okay, so I like that you guys now just pulled in the item instead of having to make the additional Firebase call. But one thing, just to keep the code slightly cleaner, I think is to destructure item, because we're doing a lot of item dot pulling properties. We can do destructure const, whatever properties we want equals to item, so we don't have to do item dot. I think that's the final thing I just want to add, if you guys want to add that in. If not, I can approve it either way. It's really minor.
Yeah, that works for me if that's good with you, Jeremiah. And then I
Okay.
can merge after this. Thank
All right,
you.
sounds good, guys. Thank you.
That's great. So do you guys had any particular issues that like challenges that you want to talk about apart from what we discussed?
I think that there were like a couple of like approaches for a few of the functions that we ended up updating. But I was glad to like have Jeremiah's expertise of like figuring out how to calculate the dates, and then he showed me how the like Milish coalescent operator worked, so that ended up making the code more concise, and I'm happy with how it turned out.
That sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, Jeremiah and Tisha. We'll go ahead with Yao and Catherine. Who wants to
Yep.
go ahead and
I'll go ahead and share. All right, let me know once you guys can see. All right. Okay, so let me begin. So for our code, we basically had to add in some validation and cleansing, I want to say, of the user's input and add item before we allowed the item to be added into the database. So the acceptance criteria has, I guess, increased significantly since we last spoke about this as per our discussion with Lyle. So I'll go through this one by one because they are pretty specific. So we do want to show an error message if the user tries to submit an empty item. This includes empty space like this, or if all of it is empty, this will now return the same error. Invalid inputs will have their spaces trimmed before being saved to database. So for example, I believe PS4 is not on this list, so all the extra spaces in the front should be trimmed prior to it being added. There should be an error message, a confirmation message down here that is fixed with Jeremiah's new change, so that should be fixed afterwards. And as you can see, PS4 is added without the additional spaces. Now we have decided on some special characters that we're allowing. So alphanumeric spaces and dash, ampersand, and apostrophe are considered valid. So we should be able to add this. I believe I don't have M&M on this list right now, so let me just go ahead and add that, and then you should be able to see that as well. So M&Ms. Okay. Yeah, we have that. That's added. And if invalid characters are used, we should show an error message. So I'm going to add something I don't believe is on the list right now. So fish, I'm going to add that. It'll tell you the message invalid and please only use the characters I've mentioned above. And then and we should show a message if it's identical. So I just added PS4. If that gets added, it should show. It's already on the list. And we also want to normalize in terms of casing and spacing. So I have ice cream on the list. So I'm going to add in ice cream like this with multiple spaces, as well as all caps. And that should not add. So it has caught that. And then the last two error messages should show concurrently. So let's do something like hat. Oh, so this is both a duplicate and I'm adding special characters to it. So both messages are now showing for invalid and a duplicate as well. And we want to show an error message if something matches. So let's just do a direct match actually. So something like that. Yeah, and that's already there. And the user's input is saved to database. So M&M's PS4, like I showed you earlier. All right, let's take a look at the code. So for the code in an add item component now, we need the data just to check to see what's already inputted. So we have passed that down. And as you can see, we can either return 1 error message, 0 error message, or 2 error message. So we have decided to use an array. And as such, we have updated the use effect to reflect that as well. And now for the bulk of our tissue, we created a additional function just because when we first did this, our on form submit function was getting a little bit messy because we put the logic all in there. So we have decided to extract that. So this function will be called in on form submit prior to adding the input into the database. So it takes data and trimmed item name. And this, because an empty string considered falsy, we have, convert that to truthy. And if it's empty, please return an empty item. Here we're setting up our error message array. And then search, what this does, and let me just go through what this regex means. This caret sign means not. So any characters that's not, alpha or numeric, or any of these special characters or space. And I just means casing. So we're matching for both lower and uppercase. Anything that's not this, right? And if it's not -1, so -1, search will return the first index it's found something, and if it has not found something, it will return -1. So in this case, if we have found something, right, it's not -1, then please let the user know to input something that's valid. If there's invalid characters in their input. And then for normalized item name, we essentially want to also compare cases where, we have invalid characters, however, maybe similar to something that's already on our list. So we're normalizing. In this case, we're replacing, and G stands for global. So instead of stopping at the first character that we are replacing, we're going through the whole thing. So this is kind of similar to replace all, if you guys are familiar with that. So anything that is not considered valid, we're replacing with space, just so we can later on use find. And what find does, we at first use filter, but later on I think find is better, just because we're not going through the whole item list anymore. We're returning on the first one. So just kind of an optimization, in my opinion. And then replacing all of the big spaces with no space, and then compare to the normalized item name, which should have already removed the space. And then if we found a potential match that matches the user's input, then we're returning the message that it's already in the list. Okay, and because we do want to trim beginning and ending spaces before we save to the database, we have trimmed that. Now we're calling the validate item input function I showed you guys earlier. And then if there is any, this error array returns the messages. Let me go back down. And then if the error array.length is equal to something, we're going to set our messages. And like I mentioned, we're trimming the input before we add it. And then this part should work after Jeremiah pushes in his fix. And then since we now have an array, we are checking if there is any, then we're mapping through it. The key originally we used index, but Lyle did mention that we want our keys to be unique in the whole DOM. So we have added the error message. And then finally, this was fixing the bug when I merged last time. Any questions?
That was great, yeah. So this question to both of you, like if you want to discuss anything specific that you faced, or any specific thing that you think like it was helpful from others' comments and
I think both me and Catherine struggled a lot when we first approached this, just because there were a lot of questions and a lot of cases I felt like the acceptance criteria did not address. Thankfully, Lau was able to, kind of spell things out for us. And I feel like in this case, we kind of have to do that since the examples are so specific. And the second thing I think we both struggled with was refactoring this, because originally we did not use an array. And we were trying to think how can we, return, and I messed around with this a little bit when I was refactoring, but essentially there was no way, because if you returned in either fashion, you're not going to catch the other error message. And so we had to use an array for our error messages. Anything from you, Catherine?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue I think is we thought we were trying to ask as many questions as we could in our planning session last Sunday. But then sometimes when you just start to go into it, you're like, okay, well, what about this scenario? What about this scenario? So it was definitely, and then when we first did it, we were like, okay, let's make sure we have these ideas in place and that we can get it to work. And then, the naive way, we just took the first look at it and we were like, well, we have to refactor this. And so I think that was the more difficult part, figuring out, okay, this works, but how do we want to optimize this now? Yeah, so I think that was the more difficult piece of it. We thought this was going to be an easier story going in, but it was, because there's so many different ways to do it, figuring out which one was the best was kind of like the harder part.
Good, great to know that. Thanks so much, guys. You're doing great. I think we'll proceed on with our meeting today.
Mute button was literally not unmuting. So I think next we've got the communication for devs module. Devin, are you ready to go on that? Sweet.
All right, can you all see my window?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this second screen. All right, so communications for devs is this week's presentation. And as you just saw, communication is key. So, you know, what are we talking about here? So in this initial aspect, we're really referring to documentation, which is something that you all or have been familiar with up to this point. And let's get into the why. So really the idea behind it is just trying to figure out, what did I do again? Yeah. And one good way to do this is just basically to write things down as you go through. And this is something I was kind of asking you as you went through, which was, you know, what challenges did you face, and you know, how did you overcome them? I mean, one, because it's good for interviews, but then also it's just because, you know, it helps your own learning process and helps you to remember as well. It's also a great tool for revisiting big decisions. And kind of like we alluded to at last week's sync, is that sometimes you tend to forget, you know, especially because of how big the code bases could be, or how complex the issues could be. Yeah, and in addition to that, it can be very useful for onboarding new team members. Yeah, because basically it would avoid institutional knowledge, which would come down to, you know, knowledge that's specific to individuals in there. But if you're a new person joining onto a new team, how would you get caught up, or how would you like to be caught up? Like, yeah, you could have meetings with, you know, every member of the team, or you could have some good solid documentation in place that you could refer to. Yeah, and you know, after all that, it basically empowers all team members, because it allows everybody to be on the same page and have a good understanding of what we're trying to achieve at the end of the day. So quick tips on how you'd approach this. So write for the person who knows the least. Yeah. So like, again, think about somebody new joining the team who has little to no experience in your code base. Optimize for the person who needs quick reference. Yeah, and that comes down to formatting. So maybe write in such a way that you could just quickly refer to something instead of having to read very long documentation. You know, some good headers, or at least, you know, some kind of point form that would help maybe convey that initial idea, and then you could expand it afterwards. And there is good documentation for this, which we'll share later on. And pull requests. So I don't think you'll need much information regarding this, because you'll have been doing a very good job on this so far. But as you know, it gives reviewers some context in your code. And in addition to that, a big part of interviewing is talking and walking through your code. So having a robust PR description will help you to remember what you did. And I mean, I would say that the PRs that you'll have done so far are quite exemplary. It basically, you know, captures all this. You'll have been doing things like showing screenshots. I haven't seen GIFs or videos, but you know, most times they weren't really necessary. You could also include links to resources within the reference, and you could also self-review your PR before asking others to review your code. This might come in handy, or I should say this should be more relevant in cases with things like draft PRs that you all usually set up. And generally, you'd like to keep your PRs small and narrowly scoped. Now, in this case, most of these issues are already set up for you, so it is kind of, you know, on a bit of rails in that you know exactly what your PR will contain. Yeah, but you know, for future reference, keep it small, keep it manageable. You don't want to write too much code or have, you know, thousands of lines of code per PR. Yeah. And there's also a good PR description here. But as you'll see, this is kind of similar to a lot of the PRs that you all have written so far. So, you know, keep it up. Comments and code. So this is something that we kind of touched on last week as well. So as you know, it would give the team more context while they're actively tracing through code. And code can in some ways be self-documenting, but decisions behind the code are not always self-apparent. So I think it comes down to basically having some kind of balance between the two. If you read Uncle Bob's clean code, you know that he's very much against comments within code. You know, generally they say that your variables and functions should be named in such a way that you should just be able to read those things and basically follow the code. But sometimes it, you know, it could be that good and still not be 100% clear. So some of the functions I saw that you're writing up this week, I think it was Yao that just showed. It basically went through. I basically had a comment for each one of the acceptance criteria that you all created. So I thought that was a good way where, you know, a good use of comments then, because even if you named your variables very well, I don't know how you would have gotten that idea across. You know, and similarly, I think it would be applicable in things like types for your arguments, especially for functions. So you would have seen JS docs being used for a lot of the functions to specify like what kind of types you'd expect for your arguments and then what it would return. That's also a good way to at least know how the function works. And that might just be particular to JavaScript because it's so loose with typing here. If it was TypeScript, there would be less of an issue for that. But it's also a good idea of where documentation could be useful. Yeah. And what to write. So focus on why this code is written rather than what the code does. I think that's kind of self-explanatory, but I mean, a code kind of speak for itself, So focusing on why it was written, maybe you would like to refer back to the acceptance criteria or maybe how the issue itself was written. And then we also share some good examples of code comments. All right, and this kind of comes back to you also. What have been your experience with documentation, PR description, code comments, and so on? What have those things been like for you?
Like in general or in the Collab Lab?
Yeah. Has there been anything new that you picked up or any even so, like the way y'all write PRs right now, was that something y'all were exposed to before, or was that something y'all learned from some of the introductory documentation that was given to you?
So I want to.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just like thinking. So I have like two things to say about this. I think the first thing is out of all the documentation, like on our PRs, I definitely think the description, the acceptance criteria is a given, but testing steps and QA steps are very helpful just because sometimes we might not be familiar with the other team's story. And I think that kind of helps guide us as we're testing. The second thing I want to say is that I'm comparing to what I'm doing here to work, and honestly, what we do here is a lot more robust because at work, I feel like the team really cares about getting our PRs out and not really about documenting. And sometimes my PRs, like my description, literally ends up being the same as my title. So like I don't really go much into it, but then again, my PRs are kind of small. But yeah, I think just those two things. And after, me and Catherine started documenting our code this week, I find it helpful just because when I had to present, like having those as guides, like made it easier for me to remember, oh, hey, I remember what this was for now.
Yeah, I was going to say in the past, I've had to document a lot, but never for other developers. And so I always say, like, whenever I ask like any of you guys to like review after I've written like a description of the pull request, I know I'm like super wordy. So I'm trying to like make that happy medium of like not over describing, like let the code describe itself, but also like focusing more, and you kind of touched upon this, Devin, focusing more on the why instead of like what it does. And for me, that's a little difficult. So I've been trying to like inadvertently do that. But yeah, I feel like I can't remember anything in life now. I don't know if it's mom brain or what, but like having to go back even like 2 weeks ago, I don't remember anything that I did. So like having those PR requests is so helpful. Like, why did we do that? And so like, yeah, it's definitely really, really helpful.
Yeah, I
For
think it's
sure.
also a good idea to make note of those things for yourself because, especially on this project, you may work on several projects afterwards, and maybe even just to give yourself talking points for going through interviews. Just because one of the most common questions would be, what was the challenge you faced on a project and how did you overcome it, or describe something technical that you worked on. And it's the same thing. Like I've forgotten stuff that was things that were fairly technical at the time, but kind of looking back at it now, I was like, but I just didn't write it down, and I should have written it down. So I started doing that now. And then even right now, for like my own PRs, I try to be a bit more descriptive as well. Even if it's on a small team where I know I'm doing something specific, but I don't want to get into that bad habit of just creating like a very vague PR that says nothing. It's not as detailed as what you'll do, but I think what you'll do is still much better than having too little information.
For sure, I think the person I think of first when I'm writing comments or doing documentation is myself. I really don't want to be in that position, 6 months from now and going back and going, why the heck did I do it this way? And often, I'm trying to slam something out fast and not having properly annotated the why in there is probably the first thing that will fall away later. The thing that I'm usually trying to capture as I go through the code. I do think that, the what of the code should be evident by reading the code itself. And Andrew made a comment in some thread earlier in the week, but it's kind of worth reiterating. People don't spend enough time like actually opening up a file of code and then just reading the file from top to bottom, and so that you can understand like just everything that's going on in that file. But it's a good exercise to do because I think that teaches you a couple things. It teaches you a little bit about kind of organization and what things are for, but it really does give you a feel too for, should I add comments in the document this here? Is it obvious just by reading it through? And that kind of thing. And so I think like whenever you're opening a pull request or just in general, just open up in raw form the file and just read it without like any additional comments or anything else along those lines. And I think that's a good way to sort of really feel out if you've documented this properly in the code with comments and structure and all that good stuff. Anyway, rant over. Okay. Did we have any other thoughts on code, comments, documentation, communicating for devs? All communication is in Slack and use as many GIFs as possible. You'll be all right. Okay, so then I'm going to start talking about issues. Before we get too far into it, it looks like we have the two, like they look more or less complete. The pull requests, but they're not. It looks like they're still open. So I don't think we have much more to do there. We're just kind of worth calling out. We'll probably want to get those, merged and good and happy as soon as we can. And if you need any help with anything in particular, let me know. Fire off in Slack. And again, I apologize. I've been kind of out of it the last couple of days. So I'm falling down on my duties. I apologize. But we'll get all that stuff taken care of. Next, I'm going to share my browser window. Okay. Should be able to see this. So here's the pull requests. Here's the list of upcoming items. And I'm going to spend a minute before we dive into the two issues coming up, actually pulling up this one here. I just want to talk about this very briefly because something we should start to think about. So the last item on our project is, as a user, I want the app to look professional and welcoming. I'm just going to read through this real quick. The last 2 weeks of the project will function a little differently than the rest. Your team will self-organize around a lightweight design process to come up with a polished look and feel for your app. So it'll require you to make decisions together as a whole team, then implement your vision. The process outlined here is our best suggestion for how to proceed, but you are free to take whatever approach you see fit. You'll notice that this is the last issue on the board. That's because the expectation is for you to write the stories needed to complete the implementation of your design direction. As always, lean on your mentors for guidance if you are unsure how to proceed. So what this is telling us is that starting next week, we are going to sort of self-direct. So we did a little bit of a bug write-up workshop earlier. You all done a good job adding a couple extra ones. So I think you've already gotten a little bit of a head start on writing up issues. So you'll probably want to do some more of that as we come into the closing weeks. I'll briefly touch on what else is in here. What's the tone you're going for? What feeling are you trying to convey? Come up with 3 to 5 words that best capture how you want your users to perceive your app. Is it fun, clean, ironic, business-like, or other words? You can create a mood board, kind of as a design board type thing. Decide on the fundamentals of your design, including the following. Do you want typography, specific fonts? Do you want specific colors? The color palettes? Be sure to be accessible while we're doing that. Iconography, imagery, and decide whether you want to code your CSS from scratch or integrate a CSS framework. There's pros and cons to each. And there's a brief mention of some other tooling here that we can use. So we're not doing any of this right now, but it's worth to start to think about. So if you have really strong opinions or desires on stuff you'd like to do design-wise, or you have a framework that you really like that you want to bring in, now's the time to start thinking about it. And then when we have the conversation next week, we can talk about it and kind of bring all those things in. So just want to get little brainworms in there for you to be chewing on that kind of in the background as we proceed through the rest of the work. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual issues we're going to do this week. We've got 2. And there's been kind of a pattern of this, but this week is more than others, I feel like a little bit lopsided. So one of these issues is significantly more complicated than the other one. So I want to think about that when picking up the issue, and potentially, maybe we need to reach out and get help from the other team during the week, as we work through it. So just be prepared to, ask questions in Slack and, kind of work through it as we need it. So we'll get into the thick of it here. You just see what's coming. This first one here is, as a user, I want to be able to delete items from my shopping lists. My list isn't cluttered with items I don't want to buy in the future. Users might make a mistake when entering an item, or may decide they won't be buying a certain item again in the future. Allowing them to delete list items will help keep their list tidy. We see the list item component renders a button that will allow the user to delete an item from their list when clicked. Clicking the delete button prompts the user to confirm that they really want to delete the item. The delete item function in API Firebase has been filled out and deletes the item from the Firestore database. As noted in the wireframe. Yay! Creating a delete should pop up a confirmation dialog. Use an ARIA label to denote assume we'll need to buy the item, and the labels with a forward. But so as you can see here, here's a suggestion on the deletes. As I mentioned, there's going to be a confirm. We say we want to give users a chance to confirm destructive actions. So, and are you sure, or do you really want to do this type thing? It might be tempting to create your own modal dialog component to handle this confirmation, but modals are fraught with accessibility concerns, so consider using a simple JavaScript confirm dialog. It's just ironic considering that with the cookies thing, now every single website on the planet puts a modal up in front of you, asking you if you want cookies or not. Don't do that. Do something slightly more elegant. Okay, but otherwise I feel like this is pretty straightforward. Do we have questions here? Great. All right. Let's move on to item number 12. As a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I am likely to need to buy each of them again, so that it's clear what I need to buy soon. sorting items by how soon the user might need to buy them will make it easier for the user to identify what they need to buy, which will in turn help them better plan their shopping trips. To that end, we will be sorting items into 4 possible groups according to how urgently the user should buy the item. You need to buy soon, you need to buy kind of soon, you need to buy not soon, and inactive. So we have the date last purchase, date next purchase saved on the item already. We're going to be using those things here and dropping them into date ranges, similar to kind of like we've been talking about before. To implement this feature, your team will need to create some new UI elements so that the user knows how their items are sorted and write some logic behind the scenes to perform the sorting itself. Read the acceptance criteria and our notes carefully to be sure you understand the tasks at hand, and don't be afraid to reach out to the rest of your team and your mentors if you need help. You got this. Let's go over the acceptance criteria. Items in the list are shown with an indicator that tells the user they should buy the item soon, kind of soon, or not soon, or that the item is inactive. This urgency indicator does not rely only on color. So remember, we have colorblind people and such out in the world. The wireframe here does show a colored indicator, which is fine if we do that, but we have to have something else there to also indicate to the user how soon this is coming up. API Firestore exports a new compare purchase urgency function with the following behaviors. It sorts the items last, sorts inactive items last, then sorts items in ascending order of days until purchase, and then sort items with the same day until purchase alphabetically. Sort of a complicated nested criteria in there. We can talk about that a little bit more if we need to. A stretch goal. If you complete all of the previous acceptance criteria, consider what happens when the item's date next purchased has passed, but it isn't yet inactive. Let's call that item overdue. Extend the functionality of compare purchase urgency to sort the overdue items to the top of the list. Indicate in your UI when an item is overdue. So just another piece of criteria on there. Again, there's a lot going on, so I don't know if we necessarily need to be super concerned about that, but it's nice to have. I know there's a lot to do in this issue. Read the section for some ideas about how to approach the task ahead. The get days between dates function in search detailed dates will be useful. Remember, the dates in the Firestore database are special timestamped objects. You will need to call their toDate method to get a JavaScript date that we can work with. Indicating purchase urgency in the UI is tempting to use colors or icons to indicate how soon the user should buy an item, but keep in mind, if you only use color, a colorblind user won't be able to tell the difference between urgency indicators. And if you use icons, you have to teach users what those icons mean. So if you just like have like a star, circle, a dot, or something, right? Like something to tell us what those are actually representing. With these constraints, it's probably best to render plain text like soon, kind of soon, etc., in order to show urgency. You can still use color alongside the text, and the design of where that text goes is up to you. So it's a little bit open-ended and allowing you to make some decisions yourself as to how this should go. But there's a lot going on. Jeremiah, you raised a hand.
Yeah. So about I guess I'll have a few questions after seeing both of the tissues for this week. So I guess the first question I'll ask is related to this one. So looking through the Firestore documentation, they have some functions that you can use to order by the data as it's coming back to the front end. I don't know if you could do everything in the acceptance criteria solely when you are receiving the data, but would it make more sense to do it that way rather than having its own function that you're using in our API, I guess is my question.
I don't see why that would be a bad idea, with the exception that there is sort of a nested sort criteria going on here, which you should be able to handle with a proper sorting query. Now I'm thinking a little bit more SQL off the top of my head as opposed to the NoSQL Firestore database, but I'm pretty sure you can get away with the same type of behavior, which is that, if you do order by in a query, you can usually have 2 clauses in there that you can use. One taking.
Yeah, I saw that you can do that.
Yeah. So I think that's fine. And if you can see how to make that work by reading the documentation, great. I can't think of why that was a bad idea off the top of my head. Sometimes it's easier to do some stuff in JavaScript, but then you'd have to kind of do a ordering, comparing thing on your own there too. And I can't remember what function we already have spelled out here to help you with it. So definitely worth looking into. Nothing wrong with that approach, I don't think. As long as it handles what we're trying to do. Yeah. You said you had other questions too.
Yes, my other question is from the wireframe from the last number 11. There are like the details like section that isn't in any of like we haven't done that. So like is stuff like that, or like on the bottom how there's only list and add item, you can't see home, is that going to be a part of the UI like design aspect of I guess like this project?
Yeah, I actually noticed that earlier and I wasn't entirely sure
Okay.
where that came in. I say it's up to me. I'd say like we probably save that for the final 2-week implementing thing. But it is kind of interesting that, yeah, like the item details page is totally in the wireframes and it's totally not in any of our stories. And I was like,
yeah,
interesting.
I can't remember if anything else has been like that, but I feel like, yeah, there's some things that are like visually it looks like they're features, but they're not. Like we haven't implemented them. So I'm just,
Yeah, so I
wondering when that
wanted
comes
to
in.
talk about this, just because in, the other more lengthy tissue, it did say that, color is one option, but the other option is to add the actual text, right? Just because icons might not be a good idea at this point, although we could probably do it at the end, just explain what the icons mean if you want to go for that. I thought about it, and if we kind of like how our list is right now, we can either add, the soon, not so soon text, like, in parentheses or like next to or whatever, but it might look nicer if we add like the details. And then if they want to see like, hey, when do I need to buy this? And they can click that. So maybe that's what this is, kind of suggesting too.
Let me unwrap that real quick. So first, I don't think it's not, let me phrase this correctly. I think icons and colors are fine, but they can't be the only thing that we have that the user can see. So again, it's just up to how you want to do it. But colors, we need to have some other indicator than color, text or otherwise, so that the user, if they are colorblind or have high contrast mode on or something, can tell. And icons are okay, but they'd need context. So like you'd need a legend or something added to the page as well. So whether or not we want to do that, like if you do go that way, you just have to indicate to the user some way what they actually mean. There's an extra piece just to say that like it's not that we can't do it, it's just that there's other things to consider if we want to do it that way. As for the implementing of the details page, so let's look at what we have on 11, because this is kind of light. I don't know, maybe we could tack on some nice to have stuff in here as well. The only thing I would be conscious of is in case the other pair needs help, I would say worry about getting the existing acceptance criteria done for both issues first before tackling extra credit like the item details. But if we want, do we want to add them in here as a nice to have? Should I implement the details? Okay, cool. So let's do that right now. Mouse to work. However, I don't think that the item details page is where like we can have that information there too, but the list itself should have the indicators of when stuff needs to be bought. So it should be on the list view page. Okay. Other questions? Did I cover all the that were asked just there?
Do kind of want to ask some questions
Sure.
about the item details page now that we decided to do it. Any guidance on like what should be on that page? Because I know Firebase returns a lot of information, like, you know, mixed purchase, right? Like last purchase, total purchases, like what do we want to show there? And how do we want to show it? Do we want to like do a separate page for each, or do we want to do like a hover? I guess not really hover, or do we want to do like a collapse or modal, which, you know, accessibility issues, like how do we want to present that?
I think it's fine to have all the attributes that are on the object itself. I'm trying to think if there's anything on there that like we wouldn't want to present to a user, but nothing jumps out at me that like would be obviously bad. So I think you could probably just render everything that we got on this page. I'm not sure where the purchase this item 17 times comes into play there. So I will leave that as an exercise up to the developer as to whether or not they want to fuss with that too much. Otherwise, it's got like a little back button on there, which, you know, they say, hey, this needs an ARIA label, but I could see this either being a modal or a straight up new page. Part of me really thinks it should be a new page, like with a new route that you can get to by clicking on an item. It might not be in like the nav that we have, but like that's just how I would do it. Tends to be a little bit better for a couple of reasons. Like if you had it, if this was really me doing it, what I would do is I would say like, okay, so your item's going to have a ID or a name on it, and I would go, you know, around the items page, and then when I click on one, I would add another URL parameter in the past there for that specific item. So kind of like a RESTful page resource. You guys know what I'm talking about. So like if I go to I always forget the route to our page. So let me just go to the pull request that we have open. Jeez. So just do that. Just there. It's like if I go to just create a new list. Item. List. What I would hope is if I like clicked on the details for this, that I would go to like my thing or something along those lines, right? And that would be where I would put the page. Up to you, but that just feels the most natural to me, and it would give you a actual resolvable URL to arrive at for an individual item. There's some tricky implications with that though, because you have to make sure that, you know, the data is actually loaded for this item too. So, you know, if you're trying to get there from one way or the other. So here's some stuff to think about. Like it's probably an opportunity to get yourself in the weeds if we're not careful. So, that makes sense. Okay. Back to the actual tissues. So this one and save it. Great. And there's this big guy. Do we have any more questions here? Because there's a lot going on. If you don't know, you will later, I assume.
I'm sure.
Okay. Where did I put the project brief? So who's our pairs for this week? Is Jeremiah and Yao and Catherine and Tisha. Anyone want to state their case for one issue or the other this week? Someone feeling particularly brave, or does someone want a lighter, easier week with the other issue?
Me and Jeremiah take the bulkier one.
I think everybody wants the bulkier one, but it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, it looks interesting. It looks like the most fun, but that's also where I think like it's I would expect the concept of swarming to come in, which is that, you know, your team A will go and get the delete stuff done and then help out with the other issue potentially. This is kind of what I would imagine happen. So do we want to like rock, paper, scissors it, or yeah, do really strong opinions either way?
Can we do guess the number?
I like that. I mean, 1 in 1,000. What am I guessing now? I'm just kidding.
I wonder if there's is there like a random number generator website. Let's try that. So
Price is Right rules.
Random.org. Yeah.
nice. Shush. Pop-ups, cookies. Can you just give me a random number?
Oh, there's
Sorry.
numbers right below. Yeah, right there.
Who wants to? One integer, value between 1 and 100. So let's see if I can. Where's my chat? Chat. Can't actually see it. Let's zoom. Okay, well, I'll just put
It's
you
really
on
hard
the-
since you're sharing your screen.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I see it now. All right. Why don't people, somebody drop in a number into the chat that you want to, and then we'll do the random generator to spit it out.
Yeah, you do it.
Can we
Wait, we have
can we do
That's a
4
good-
people? Like everybody guess a number, or right? Okay.
I put
Yeah.
mine in.
everybody put it in, and then whoever gets closest wins. How's that?
Are we waiting on Jeremiah and Tisha? Oh yeah. 50, Jeremiah. It's right back to the
You never
gonna-
know.
Gonna do the Price is Right move here. I'm like,
middle. Okay.
ready? 49.
Oh my God, Jeremiah! What?
Okay, Jeremiah, you win. What do you want to do?
This was rigged. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd rather do the harder one if that's okay.
I figured. All right. Yeah, that's interesting. So there, cool.
I have a question about the details page.
Okay.
So, like, I'd like to implement it as a new page, but just like thinking of other ways for like the user to interact with it. Would it be advisable to have something that functions as sort of like a drop down where if you click on details, the details will show up right below the item?
I mean, that would work too. I don't have crazy strong opinions here. I was just thinking through how I would do it if I was going to walk in there and start that way. That sounds great to me also. So, you know, that's.
I'm actually very like pro that idea, just because like we're not showing much details, and I don't necessarily think that it warrants its like whole blank page just for some lines. I think we can maybe like fit it maybe like underneath, like as a collapse possibly, or some other way that's not going to take too much space.
Just make sure it's accessible. That's the rule.
Do we want to, if we get to that point, if Tisha and I get to that point, maybe what we'll do is we'll brainstorm a little bit and then maybe bring it to the group. Because I think Jeremiah does make a good point in the chat, that we don't want to do too much crazy work and then decide on like a UI and then be like, oh no, wait, it would be better to do, you know, XYZ and then have to like scrap all the work we did. So I think it definitely is worth trying to start it, because then we can at least make sure we know exactly what item details we want to pull. Like we can set up the piece of like getting the data and putting the data in the right and in a place, and then we can always extract it. So we'll touch base with everyone just to be like, hey, we were thinking of this, so we're not like totally off base to what the team is thinking, maybe.
There's probably a couple of different ways to, if you make it a React component one way or the other, whether that's hopping in as a droppy down thing, or it's a new page or whatever, you can probably move that around if you don't screw with it too much. It's kind of like the nice thing about components is that they do allow you to kind of move around how you actually implement them on the page. So if you're careful, you probably won't get too stuck into a corner should you decide to change it and then the next week. Okay. Other questions?
Just a suggestion, since I feel like when I remember when I had the story of like how we want to do like the add item on the list, maybe you could come up with several ideas and just bring it back to the team, and then we can like all vote with, you know, the emoticons. How you want to implement it for now.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Other questions, comments, concerns? Most that time. Apologies for again being on lower energy this week than normal, but
I have like an unrelated to this week question, if for our like last 3 minutes, if that's okay.
Sure.
So like after we pick the framework or methodology that we're going to use for like CSS and UI next week, like how do you usually break up like tasks in that realm, I guess? Like, is it going to be like page by page for groups, or how does that work?
So I mean, it is going to be kind of open-ended in that part of the exercise is actually talking through that as a team and deciding how we want to write up issues and assign work and do that kind of thing. It's also worth noting that we don't actually have to have picked the framework by the end of the day next week, because you do have 2 whole weeks to do stuff. So what I've seen people do in the past is say like, we're going to use that first week to research and design, and then the second week to implement and do it as an option. There's a bunch of different ways to tackle that. So again, if you all just come in ready, hot to go next week and be like, yeah, I want to do Tailwind and I want to you know, I have a color palette all picked out and like, you know, I ready to go, great. But that's not a requirement, right? I only brought it up today just because I wanted you to start to noodle on it and think about it and get it processed in the back of your head. But you know, we'll have plenty of opportunity to talk it through and assign the work. So this is to say, think about how you might want to approach and answer that question yourself, so that when we get to it next week, we can discuss and decide how we want to assign the work. Okay. Anything else? Cool. All right. As always, you're killing it. You're doing a great job. So I expect, you know, this week, get out there the acceptance criteria, you know, we've added on to the one, and the other one's got a lot. I have no concerns about you all being able to tackle it. So you'll do great. And then yeah, we'll roll right into the super fun time of the last 2 weeks where we kind of do whatever we want and really get to enjoy it. I think this is all going great, and you're exceeding all expectations. Good job. Alrighty, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Last chance for comments before I close this out.
Nope, feel better.
Thanks.
Yeah, good luck everyone, feel better.
Good night.
Good night.
Yay.